What's good, y'all? What a surprise last night was. I don't know about you guys, but I was not expecting this trade to happen whatsoever. I didn't expect Cat to get traded. I didn't expect Julius Randle to get traded, and they got traded for each other. Now, before we really get into the trade details and all of that, in case you guys don't know, I am a Knicks fan. I mean, you see I'm wearing the shirt here. I have Julius Randle's jersey in the background of my videos. I do want to say, Julius, thank you for everything you've done for the Knicks. I know there's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of criticisms from the media and from fans, but the Knicks would be nowhere near what they are right now without you, Julius Randle, and I want to thank you for that. You came to the Knicks in free agency. You decided to come here when the Knicks were not cool, when we were the laughingstock of the league. You came here, grew as a player, became an all-star, most improved player, all-NBA player, led us to the playoffs for the first time in like a decade. You have done so much for this Knicks team, and I cannot thank you enough. I'm super sad to see you go. I will be a fan for the rest of your career, and then even beyond that. Thank you, Julius Randle. But now to look at the trade from a basketball standpoint and to throw my personal emotions and bias out the window, this is a very polarizing trade, I would say. I feel like both people from the Knicks and people from the Timberwolves side are kind of a little weirded out by this trade, so I'm going to break it down for you guys, give my opinions. I'm going to start by talking about this trade from the Knicks perspective. And I feel like Julius Randle and Karl-Anthony Towns are much similar players than a lot of people think or talk about. They're both very polarizing players. Fans either love them or hate them because they're super talented and show flashes of being amazing players, but then they also have these mental lapses that make you think like, just what are you doing? But when you look at what they can bring to a team, they do have their differences, and I do think that Karl-Anthony Towns, both position-wise and schematically, fit the Knicks better than what Julius Randle was. This whole offseason and summer, ever since the Knicks lost Isaiah Hartenstein, and Mitchell Robinson obviously has his injury history and is looking like he won't be ready for the start of the year, this whole offseason, it's been, can Julius Randle run the 5? Can we have a small ball lineup where Julius Randle is guarding other bigs? Now with this trade happening, you don't have to worry about that. Karl-Anthony Towns is a true 5. Obviously, since they traded for Rudy Gobert, he's been playing power forward, and he still can play power forward, but he has that ability for now that Mitchell Robinson won't be there to start the year. Like I said, they lost Isaiah Hartenstein. Instead of having to start Jericho Sims or Precious Achiuwa or a smaller Julius Randle, you can start the 7-foot stretch big Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's going to be amazing for the spacing because in those lineups where Cat is running the 5, the Knicks are more than capable of having 5 players that are well above average three-point shooters. Their most likely starting lineup on game 1 would be Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Karl-Anthony Towns. In that starting 5, the only non-shooter is really Josh Hart, and we've seen that when it matters, he's able to knock down that 3 ball. And even if you want to swap out Josh Hart for a guy like Deuce McBride, then it's a legit 5 out. If you collapse off any of those guys, you will regret it. And Jalen Brunson has never had this amount of spacing in his career. I think this is going to really open up scoring for him even more because last year when we looked, especially when the Knicks were so injured, a lot of times they would have a true center like Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson on the court, and then also a guy like Josh Hart or Precious Achiuwa, or maybe even all 3 in some really bad lineups. And you could see how that could just collapse the floor for Jalen, especially being a guy that loves to score in the paint. This is definitely going to help open that up a lot for him. And I also think that Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be great in the pick and roll. He'll be easily able to replace Isaiah Hartenstein in the very pick and roll heavy offense that Jalen Brunson likes to run. For pretty much his whole career, Karl-Anthony Towns has been a very good pick and roll player. You know, he has that big 7-foot solid body to set the screens, roll to the basket. He obviously has the shooting capability to pop out on the screen as well. He is a underrated passer if you ask me. I think that on the short roll, he's going to be able to make those reads if the defenses collapse. He can kick it out to the corner or whoever's the open man. Where I do get a little weary about this trade is the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns is not the best defender in the world, and the center position is the most important part of your defense. To be fair, I would say that Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle are probably similar defenders. I might give a slight edge to Cat, actually a little bit above Julius. And if it really becomes a super big issue, with the spacing we have and with Cat already having experience at the power forward for the last 2 seasons, I could see them running lineups where Mitchell Robinson is still the center and we just slide Cat over and have a little bit of a Twin Towers lineup. Obviously, we'd have to wait until Mitch is healthy to see if that is part of the plans for the Knicks. But even if, like, in its worst situation, if we are just strictly running Cat at the 5, with OG Anunoby and his versatile defensive capabilities, he should be able to guard some centers on some certain matchups where Cat is just getting cooked. Now to talk about the value, obviously the Knicks gave up 2 key contributors to their team in Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. Julius Randle had a player option at the end of this season. The Knicks were already kind of weird and unsure if they wanted to fully extend Julius Randle to the future. So it kind of makes sense to trade him now while he has peak value on his contract. Same thing kind of with DiVincenzo. I was a little bit taken aback when he was included in this, considering the whole Nova Boys and all of that. But then after it happened, there was a report that came out that Donte DiVincenzo wasn't as big on the Nova reunion as some of the other guys. And also he was a little frustrated that his role was going to be diminished from going from last year. He popped off and now he'd be relegated back to the bench as like a 6-man role. That kind of makes sense if all of that is true. I mean, you kind of have to do what you have to do. It is a business at the end of the day. And obviously that does hurt the Knicks' depth, but it does also open up an opportunity for Deuce McBride, who also had an incredible season last year. I think shooting the ball defensively, even as a ball handler, Deuce can provide the Knicks with a lot of quality minutes. At first, I really did not like this trade, but I think that was a little bit of just my fandom getting in the way. Now, really thinking about the trade, I think that it puts the Knicks in great position to have a championship run. I think they have an argument to having the best starting 5 in the NBA. And you know, even if you open that up, I think they have a really solid 6 or 7 still, even though they consolidated. Overall, if I had to give it a grade from the Knicks perspective, I would give it a B. And now to look at it from the Wolves perspective, like I said with the Knicks and Cat, Julius Randle is a better positional fit for the Timberwolves, considering he is a true power forward and he can run that position next to Rudy Gobert. But when you look at it schematically, I feel like he definitely is a worse fit. They definitely are losing shooting and spacing in this trade, considering Cat is the best 3-point shooting big of all time. I've said that before. I'm not just using my Knicks bias here. And Julius Randle, at best, is a streaky shooter. And this kind of compounds on itself when you look at the rest of their starters. And how Jaden McDaniels shot, I think, 33% from 3 last season. Rudy Gobert obviously is not a shooter whatsoever. And I feel like that makes it pretty easy for teams to just kind of collapse and clog the paint for Anthony Edwards. Obviously, Ant is their number 1 option, and his number 1 way to get a bucket is getting to the rim and finishing. It's going to make that a lot harder if you don't have the spacing to really keep everyone out of the paint. As it's projected right now, they only have 1 starter that shot over 36% from 3 last season, and that's Mike Conley. Mike is a great 3-point shooter, especially from those pull-ups, but he's not going to be able to carry it for everyone. But obviously, Julius Randle still does provide positive things for the Timberwolves. He is a much better self-creator than Karl Anthony Towns and can be used to kind of mitigate the pressure from just so much Anthony Edwards dribbling. I think he's a much better finisher than Karl Anthony Towns, better rebounder marginally, but still better in my eyes. And then he also is a marginally better playmaker. I feel like that could be the biggest gain from this for the Timberwolves. I mentioned in my preseason preview video about the Wolves that their biggest weakness in my eyes was their playmaking. They really didn't have a lot of good playmakers on the roster besides like Mike Conley and maybe the rookie Rob Dillingham. Julius Randle is definitely going to help out. He's going to step in and probably be their second best playmaker. I know he makes those stupid passes sometimes and has, you know, high-ish turnovers, and that kind of leads fans to think that he's a bad playmaker, but that's just not the case. He's averaged over 5 assists per game for the last few seasons now and has been a very solid passer for the Knicks. And another big part of this trade is the fact that they did get Donte DiVincenzo, who really adds to their already great bench depth. I feel like they have an argument to have one of the best benches in the NBA. If we just run it down right now, they have Rob Dillingham, Donte DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Joe Ingles, and Naz Reid. I'm not going to call out any names and shoot any strays at some teams, but there's an argument that that is a better starting lineup than some of the teams in the NBA. On a serious note, though, I mean, Donte DiVincenzo is a starter-level player. I don't think that he will start when this team is fully healthy. Obviously, it's still unknown if Julius Randle will be ready for Game 1, and if he is not, then I definitely see him sliding into the starting spot, and I do think he will be their 6th starter whenever they have someone go out for injury. And he's coming off of one of the best three-point shooting seasons I have ever seen in my life. When the Knicks had to deal with all of those injuries post-January, Donte DiVincenzo stepped up in the starting lineup and was shooting like 10 plus threes a game, shooting over 40% from three. He would just have some insane heat check moments. He has range. He can go off the dribble, catch and shoot, off movement, screens, whatever the three-point shot is, wherever it is on the court, Donte can hit it, and I think that's going to really help out the spacing that I was talking about they're losing with Cat. And in a perfect world, you would love to have him start alongside Anthony Edwards in the backcourt, but it does worry me a little bit with the playmaking. If they end up benching Mike Conley, that kind of doubles down on their lack of playmaking. We've already seen Anthony Edwards kind of struggle with making an accurate pass or the right read at times. Donte DiVincenzo is a solid playmaker, but not someone I would want to just run my point guard full time. So the lineups are going to be a little bit weird for the Timberwolves, but the real reason they did this was to get a little bit of a financial break. Karl-Anthony Towns is set to make $50 and then up to $60 million a year on his contract. Meanwhile, Julius Randle, like I mentioned before, is on a player option after this for, I believe, around $30-ish million, and then he will become an unrestricted free agent. The Timberwolves already have Anthony Edwards on a max extension. They already have Rudy Gobert on a max. They also have Jaden McDaniels on a super big $26 million a year contract. They're going to have to extend Naz Reid coming up soon. So that's the main catalyst, I guess you could say, in this from the Timberwolves. It's the fact that they wanted to open up some more cap flexibility and wanted the ability to keep Naz Reid mainly, I would say. Did they take a step back though talent-wise? I would say yes. I do think it helps their depth. You know, the 2-for-1 deal makes sense. This makes me question though, will they end up trading Julius Randle down the line? Will they let him walk in free agency? I'm not entirely sure. Overall for this trade though, I don't really like it for the now. I get slightly why they would do it financially, but at the same time, when you're coming off a Western Conference Finals appearance, you kind of want to double down as an owner and shell out the money and try to just fully push for that championship. That's just me though. Obviously, I don't make any of these decisions for these top tier NBA teams. But if I had to give it a grade right now, I would probably give it a C. So based off my grades, I do have the Knicks winning this trade. Again, definitely a big surprise, a big shock. I'm interested to see what you guys are thinking of this trade. Let me know in the comments who you think won. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.